Hello everyone, welcome to the session number 1, video number 2, organizational structures. In this video, we are going to have a look at different organizational structures and its impact to the project implementation. Now let's have a look at the organization perspective. First, let's ask this question: what is needed for the project implementation from the organization? What do you think? Well, there are quite a few things that the organization has to facilitate for the project teams to go about implementing the projects. Out of these things, two critical aspects that the organization has to be careful and facilitate are: number one, the structure. The organization has to have the right structure suitable for the project implementation based on the approach you can adopt, based on the project management framework that you pick. The structure needs to support the goals and the approach. The second thing is a culture. Organizational culture also plays a critical role in implementing projects successfully. Right? So in terms of the structures, there are three common structures available for the organizations. Number one, functional structures. Number two, dedicated project teams. Number three is the matrix, which is the hybrid version of functional and dedicated project teams. Organizational culture reflects personality of the organization. What does that mean? Based on the culture that has been established within a given organization, it will reflect on the personality of that organization, right? For example, if the organization is built on the value-based, trust-based relationships, they value interaction over procedures. They value the autonomous behavior than just micromanagement provided by the higher leadership. That is what the personality of that particular organization is. Similarly, if the negative behavior is appreciated, if people are not valuing and having mutual respect to the colleagues, then that is the personality demonstrated by such organization. Uh, in this process, it's important to know your environment. So when you work in an organization, you need to understand what that organization is all about, how the organization is being operated for some time, what kind of environment is provided, is it a friendly environment, is it supportive, etc. Right? So the more you understand that, it's much easier for you to fit into such project organizations. Finally, one thing you will realize is that the structure defines the organization. So based on the structure adopted by any organization, the organization is defined. That is to say, if you have very hierarchical, structured management layers and other level of management, as well as the production staff, they all look up to the senior level of people because that is the direction given by the company, right? Saying we have hierarchies, you got to follow that hierarchy. We have a chain of communication, you got to follow the same. We have a hierarchy of approvals, you got to follow that hierarchy. So if that's the structure that is being defined, that is what the organization is all about. So it's very important for you to be mindful about the structure that you set, because that defines the organization. All right, so let's have a look at the functional organization. Functional organization is an organization where you have multiple functions built on their own subject matter expertise. So these functional organizations are within their existing functional hierarchy, coordinate through normal management channels. Example, these these companies will work on the traditional management hierarchy. That essentially means you have very senior managers, then mid-level managers, low-level managers, and then the staff, right? So when the production staff needs to communicate with the senior leadership, they have to follow through all these channels. So this is been somewhat problematic. However, in today's world, we do see a lot of functional organizations. One function may take the coordination lead. Now, my observation is that when a company is a functional hierarchical organization, out of all the functions available, one function will take the lead. Sometimes it is if it's a software development company, sometimes it is the software engineering stream, sometimes it is the quality engineering team, sometimes it is the requirement and planning stream, etc. Right? So whatever it is, there will be one prominent function that always take the lead role. That is okay, but they may overrule the other function. So we need to be very careful, because if it's functional, ideally what it means is all the functions will have the same decision making power, same authority, same autonomy to make decisions. So they should be at a parallel management layer, where everyone is given opportunity to bring their input, bring their insights into any decision making done. Functional organizations have quite a few pluses, the positives. Some of them are these organizations have little disruption. So they concentrate on their expertise domain and they do a good job. They master the domain given to them, and then they are pretty much experts on that. So that is allowing them to proceed without much disruption, right? The second thing is a flexibility. It also allows them to be flexible in what they do. They have mastered what they do, therefore they have a lot of flexibility to manage within their stream, because they're not going to work with other streams most of the time, right? If they do, that is with a clear set of agreements. So the next thing is the best expertise. As I told you earlier, functional organizations focus on their functional domain, their expertise domain. Therefore, we see a lot of people are experts on that given field. So, which is of course a plus, right? That said, there are quite a few negatives, minuses. Number one, lack of focus. They focus on the functional stream rather than the right priorities, the ROI, companies' strategic objectives. Poor integration. If you look at multiple functions, integrating the work done by different departments, teams is extremely difficult, because teams would try to stick to their functional stream. Finger pointing happens quite often, right? Also, it is slow in producing results. That's because they just focus on their expertise. They may not work with other functional streams to ensure that they deliver the highest value at the shortest possible time windows. Also, I have observed that in functional organizations, the motivation is very weak. That essentially means I see a lot of contradictions, conflicts between the functions, and every function is trying to safeguard their people than doing the right thing. So all in all, we have quite a few pluses, quite a few negative points. So it's up to you to decide whether functional organizations fit into your project requirement. If so, go ahead with that. Otherwise, you got to decide what else could be the right organization for your project team. All right, so let's have a look at the project team organizations. This is the second type of organizational structure. As a name suggests, project team organization essentially means the organization of the team is primarily based on the project requirements. For each project, you will have a dedicated project team. So teams operates as a separate unit. They will be given a set of priorities, they will be given a budget, they will be given all the facilities required for them to be working as an independent project team. Also, you will have a dedicated project manager, which is of course a good point. So that project manager take care of everything that is needed to deliver the project assigned to that particular project team. This is from very basics like setting up the team up to the areas like managing the year-end appraisal, the performance, as well as all the admin related work. So the project manager is primarily leading the team. You may not have functional managers in such organizations. Such teams focus totally on the project, nothing else. Their major priority, their only priority is to deliver the project effectively. The interface for such teams will vary for different organizations. That essentially means sometimes their interface is the client, sometimes their interface is another third party vendor or a team who works closely with the client. So from the organizational perspective, it's primarily the project manager who is being responsible to work with the other leaders of the organization. Uh, Such project teams are mainly self-organized. If you have heard the term self-organization, it is primarily based on the concepts that the teams should be autonomous. They should be given authority to make their own decisions. It's very different to micromanage teams, right? Or teams managed using the traditional ways, where you have a manager and manager try to manage these people and staff members in such teams. In this case, yes, we do provide some level of management, but it's towards self-empowered teams. We are not going to give a lot of instructions for the team to carry out their work. We just let them know what they are supposed to work on, what their goals are. The team is free enough to find and go delivering those goals. So in such organizational structures, if they do have functional departments, they will support their teams. So what it means is, if you are in a project dedicated project team, if there are functional heads, functional managers, they will work with you to ensure that you are facilitated with the right tools and the services. So this also has a set of pluses as well as a set of negatives. Let's have a look at what kind of advantages you get from project team organizations. Number one, they're simple. So no bureaucracy, no hierarchies affecting the project team. So it's just the project team that consists of the project members that may include the business analysts, designers, the developers, the testers to project managers, right? But it's simple enough. Building up such teams is fast. They are generally motivated due to the fact that they are given a lot of autonomy to make decisions. They are given a lot of freedom to fail. They are given a lot of freedom to try out new concepts, new technologies, and then still ensure that they deliver the highest value. Is integration. So if you want to integrate the work done by such teams, it's quite easy because these guys know what's happening around them, what they have been implementing. So when it comes to a point where they have to think of integration, it becomes super easy, right? That said, there are a few negatives, disadvantages. So some of them are expensive. They are generally expensive because you get the best people with the passion, with love into the areas and the tools and techniques that they master. They are also disruptive, right? They tend to kind of break the things to build the things. Or the organizations, the clients have to be used to such disruptive approaches. And they are totally based on projects. So such organizations will be formed in order to deliver a project, and as soon as the project is done, they will dissolve. Aftermath, that is essentially means you kind of try out the things uh, to get something done and learn. uh, we try to experiment concepts before we know for sure that this is going to work. So it's okay. So when such organization is present, the client stakeholders need to understand the approach that they take, right? They trust inspection and adoption. They try out something and then they want to adopt based on their learning. The third type of the organization structure that we are going to discuss is matrix organization. So it's obviously hybrid. It's the hybrid version of the functional organization and the project dedicated project organization. Horizontal project management structure on traditional functions. So what it means is when you look at the organizations, there'll be a project management layer or responsibility in parallel to the traditional functions. So if you look at the functional managers and the project manager, they sit in the same level. So well, that is a good thing as well as a bad thing. So let's try to dig deep and see how it works. Hybrid organizations can be a headache with two chains of command. I have seen when it's hybrid, what happens is there'll be two managers looking at one single resource. For example, if you consider a software engineer, the software engineer will need to report to the stream head or the functional manager from the software engineering stream, as well as the project manager. So in terms of deciding what is best for that guy, you probably need to consider the input from both the managers. Sometimes it conflicts very badly. However, there's a belief that when it's functional, you can ensure that resources are optimized for better effect. That essentially means you are being able to allocate the resources very effectively. Maybe they are saying that due to the fact that functional management is well aware of the resource allocation across the company, right? So if they have 10 people, they know, functional managers will know where exactly these people are deployed. So in case they see certain idling time from any resource, they will be in a position to deploy them into the right place. So maybe that works. Dual focus, that essentially means they need to work on the functional management priorities as well as the project management priorities. Sometimes I have seen that this is problematic. For example, when functional management wants to get something done, they try to push those priorities to the project team. At the same time, the project manager may have very critical priorities to be delivered within the same time frame. So it becomes very critical at that point, and probably that might lead to conflicts. These are different forms of hybrid versions. One, you could say functional, then balance teams as well as project teams. As I briefed earlier, in such teams, you have problems when you want to appraise, when you want to do annual appraisals for your team. So I've been in situations where functional management would not consider my input as a project manager. They trust their input is more than enough to reward the people. It works positively as well as negatively for the people. Sometimes uh, the most efficient person might not be rewarded well if the functional management thinks otherwise. So it's been a very challenging thing to manage in such organizations. So let's have a look at some of the advantages of matrix organizations. Some of the advantages that I have seen personally are your ability to resource sharing. So it allows you to share the resources across the organization because you are free to utilize any resource idling vacant. Second, it also gives a greater access to the talent pool. So you have the visibility to everyone or the resources within your organization. So it allows you to access them easily. Project focus. These teams are purely focused on projects, so it's a good thing because of course we are talking about project implementation. So in order to implement projects, the best thing is to have a dedicated project team fully focusing on the project. So that is there with these metrics teams. Lastly, the flexibility. So you have a greater level of flexibility to decide your priorities and assign the resources. And also, when you see certain resources are not being well used, you can redeploy them into the projects where they need them in order to ensure that resources are well utilized as well as you deliver the best value possible to your clients. That said, there are negatives, there are minuses, right? Let's have a look at them. Number one is attention. Such teams tend to be tenseful than the other types of organizations. They also tend to easily conflict because project management and the functional management may conflict, and also different streams may conflict with each other. They might say, well, my stream's priority is this, therefore, I'm not supposed to work on the things that you are supposed to work on. So I have seen such complaints and conflicts. Two bosses, not easy. When you have two bosses to report, it's not coming too easy because they may conflict with each other, and then when it comes to the praises, when it comes to the promotions, salary increments, it's not easy because it's two people trying to make decisions for you, for your team. Well, if it's well collaborated, this is great, but most of the cases what happens is no, it's not well collaborated. They are not collaborating, they are kind of competing. Stress, as we discussed, they are stressful generally. Low morale, well, this is subjective, but in most of the cases this could be true because when you have two streams looking at you, two priorities given to you, you might not be very clear about your priorities. Sometimes your effort might be to satisfy your managers, in this case two managers. Slow decision making due to the fact that the decisions have to be made by two managers, two streams. Decision making can be extremely slow. uh, with that, if you ask yourself, is there a middle ground? Well, might be, might not be. the important thing is to look at your project requirement and then try to make it uh, make it towards project organization. But the problem I see is most of the organizations have started as functional organizations. Therefore, even though we want to implement projects in such organizations, you can't get rid of the functions. Functions will remain. So while we retain the functions, what we try to do is to create project teams. In that case, you need to balance out the authority, autonomy that is available for these streams. That's the only way you can ensure that the structure supports the project implementation. All right, so modern days, you have another type of organizational structure, that is the virtual organizations. So as the name suggests, these are not physically present, these are virtually present. These organizations are formed when you have people working from different geographies. Alliance of several organizations is what is happening here, brings in the best expertise in a fast moving world. That is true if you say virtual organizations can attract the best talent globally, because that's no limit, right? If you want to hire the best constructor, best developer, best tester, that is all possible. Co-firm coordinates the effort. So in case there are multiple firms, multiple companies involved, the co-firm will coordinate the activities. They will take the lead role in managing such virtual organizations. May well feature companies in different countries. Obviously, when you have multiple geographies working towards a project, this is the best structure. Uh, if possible, make it co-located. If it's when it's not possible, obviously it will turn up to be a virtual organization. Just like the other organizational structures, the virtual organizations also do have pluses and minuses. First, pluses. The virtual organizations can be less costly. That is because a lot of infrastructure costing, the facilities can be avoided because people will be working virtually, remotely. So you have a lot of expertise, greater level of expertise available in such teams, which is great. Also flexibility, the timing that the people have to work and other labor restrictions will not be applicable to these teams. That's it. There are negatives, minuses here. Let's have a look at them. One thing is the challenge you face in coordination, right? Coordinating people is not easy. You have very little control. These teams will work if you can trust them, if you can develop trust-based teams, right? I mean, if the trust is not placed, what could happen is you may not get the best result out of such teams. The second is, of course, as we discussed just now, the control, loss of controlling. You have very minimal control in such teams because you are not collocated, you don't see what these people are doing. Therefore, such teams need to agree on their commitments and stick to commitments. So that way, if you manage such teams, you can ensure that these people, these teams will deliver the agreed commitments. They also conflict because they are from different cultures, different nationalities. They can easily conflict. They might not value their cultures. They might easily contradict with their opinions. So it's going to be another challenge. With electronic media and the increasing role of software in projects, the structure is only going to become more common. So if you have observed, most of the organizations do have virtual teams. And this is trending. So we have a lot of freelancing teams, a lot of virtual teams, uh, taking the contracts individually. Also, we have a lot of startups coming up, facilitating virtual services, virtual development. So we went through quite a few organizational structures that you can adopt. So if you look at these structures and ask yourself, what would be the best structure for my project? Well, the answer to that question is tricky, but I want you to be aware the answering that question is based on the approach you need to take, the mindset you have in terms of project implementation. So I see two types of organizations, right? One is traditional organizations, traditional teams believing that the traditional ways of project management work. The second type of the organization nowadays is agile and lean organizations. They are more focused on the agile and lean ways of project management. So if it's focused on traditional teams, these are some of the success criteria, right? Number one, success is directly related to the project manager's autonomy and authority. So if you are having a project manager with a lot of authority and autonomy to make decisions, that will be a success factor, right? Otherwise, what could happen is other functional heads and managers might try to overrule. That will not work. So if it's traditional, ensure your project manager is empowered to make the decisions, given the right authority and autonomy. And also, the structure is business specific. If you look at the business need, then form up the structure that is the most appropriate thing to do. Third, balance project needs versus those of organizations. So if you compare the organizational requirements and project requirements, you need to give the priority to the project requirements because your goal is to implement the project. Therefore, you need to give more attention on the project level requirements. Lastly, no definitive answer, right? So, I mean, yes, as I told you earlier, you will not have a direct answer to this question, but finding that answer could be possible if you try out these things carefully and ensure that you deliver the highest value within the agreed time and the budget. So if you look at the lean and agile teams, the structure, the right structure for agile and lean teams would focus on value. That is to say, your primary goal is to optimize the value delivery for your stakeholders, your clients. So if it is focused, then of course that is the right structure. Also, agile and lean teams focus on autonomous, self-empowered teams. That essentially means the team needs to be empowered to make the decisions, execute the plan, try out the new ideas, fail, and then succeed. So it's quite important that the structure that you have adopted supports lean and agile in that case. The structure also focuses on high performance. Rather than just working on company standards, procedures, you look at high performance. Is the team being able to deliver the highest value possible to the client? So that is the right structure. If the value delivery, the performance is declining, then probably you need to double check the team structure for such organization. And also these teams are lean. That essentially means you're not going to create the biggest team uh, to ensure that you have every expertise that is required but not being used at this point. You will have the team as per your need. You look at the requirement and then create the team. So you will not have any extra roles, people assigned to your project. Okay, so when you think of the project organization, we may consider out of many models available, one model that will allow you to understand the criteria is Hobbs and Manard 7 factors. So this says there are 7 factors that affect the effectiveness of the project organization. So they are namely size of the project, strategic importance. Do we understand the strategic importance? Novelty and need for innovation. Are we focusing on the innovation and novelty, right? Allowing the team to come up with new ideas and implement them. Also, integration need. Are we thinking of the integration at the end? External complexity. Do we try to understand the factors that affect the project? The factors that affect the complexity of the project implementation. 6 is budget and time constraints. Do we consider budget and time constraints in building such team? Lastly, stability of resource requirements. Do we know for sure this is the resource requirement? So all these 7 factors will help you to decide whether you have the right structure identified. Okay, so now if we look at the organizational culture, we already discussed that the organizational culture is critical to build the right project teams. There are 10 factors that you need to consider in terms of the organizational culture. Number one, member identity. That the culture allows you to give identity to your members. Based on the culture available in your organizations, the people will have their own identity. The culture also need to emphasize the team. So are we talking about the individual versus teams? So I have seen some organizations value the individual expertise than the team effort and team expertise. So that might not be the right culture to implement in terms of building the right project team. Third, management focus. So is a culture focused on the management strategies? Are we serious enough in doing the management support? That plays a major role as well. Then what about unit integration? So your organization may have multiple units. Do we talk about the integration? At the end, do we know how exactly these multiple teams work together to integrate what they have built into a single product? Also, control. How do we control the things? How do we control the project? How do we control a crisis situation? This is also part of the company's culture. Risk tolerance. Does a company tolerate risk? If so, what is the level of tolerance? Reward criteria. One of the critical areas to look at, one of the areas why people might be so demotivated to work for such a organization. So you need to look at reward mechanisms very carefully. Conflict tolerance. In terms of conflicts between people, conflicts between various situations, what is the tolerance level? Number 9 is means and end orientation. So how does the organization work together? How do you navigate through different situations? So that matters a lot as well. Finally, open system focus. If the organization believe that being open above the ideas, being open above the new suggestions, innovations, that is the culture that you said. So these 10 factors will allow you to ensure that you have an effective and appropriate culture set for your teams. All right, so let's have a look at some of the benefits of the organizational culture. Why should you have the right culture set up? First, your organizational culture shares the norms, beliefs, values, and assumptions. So therefore, it's important that you set the right culture in your organization. Second, it characterizes organization uniquely. Based on the culture being established, your organization is identified by the outside, by the people working for your organization. Third, only certainty is the variation. What it means is this: your organization's culture might change over a period of time. That is okay, but the change has to be somewhat positive. People in your organization need to feel that organization's culture is moving towards the right direction. The people observe your company from outside also need to feel that okay, this company has a great culture. That will particularly help you to reach out to the stakeholders and client and make very positive impressions. Identity plus feel a part of the organization. The culture is the identity of the organization plus it's just a part of the organization. You can't say, this is what it is exactly. Looking at the organization, you can say, hey, the culture is this and this is what it is. So the organization will represent a business, it will represent a certain level of leadership. At the same time, culture plays a major part in creating that picture. Legitimizes management system. So the culture will allow the organization to formally move towards the existing management system. Whatever the management practices will be formally accepted by the people in the organization. It identifies standards for behavior. Culture will identify the right behavior, the expected behavior to get a particular project implemented. Uh, Last but not the least, it avoids chaotic situations, chaotic decision making, chaotic project situations. So this is basically about the session one, and in this session, in two videos, we have discussed the organizational perspective, and then we discussed the organizational structure and the cultural perspective in this video. Good luck, and then we'll see you in the next session.